2023 Committee of the Whole meeting for the Town of Smiths Falls. I am Councillor Jennifer Miller. I'll be your chairperson this evening. So I would ask that to start, you please pause and reflect, and we'll start with our land acknowledgement. On March 27th, 2023, we acknowledge that the sacred land on which Smiths Falls is now located has been a site of human activity for over 10,000 years and is rich in Indigenous history. This land is the ancestral and unceded territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe Nation. We are grateful to the Algonquin ancestors who cared for the land and water in order that we might meet here today. We are also grateful to the Algonquin people for their contributions in the making of the Rideau Canal, which runs through Smiths Falls. We are mindful of broken covenants and the need to reconcile with all our relations. Together, may we care for this land and each other, drawing on the strength of our mutual history of nation building through peace and friendship, being mindful of generations to come. Okay, so we have no amendments to the agenda. And we have, is there any disclosure of monetary interest this evening? Okay, seeing none, we have two presentations, two delegations this evening. So I would ask that Dr. Lena Lee, Medical Officer of Health for our local health unit, begin her presentation. Welcome, Dr. Lee. Your mute is on.
I was ready. I was raring to go. Thank you. So, hi everyone. Thank you for the welcome. And my name is Lena. I am I guess I don't know how long you can say that you're the new person I'll say the new medical officer of health here in the Leeds Granville Lanark District Health Unit. I've been here since September, so I'm just over 6 months here now. Yeah, it's been half a year, which is pretty exciting, and it's really come by in a flash. So I wanted to come to the council to say hi and to get to know people. I've been going around to each of the municipalities to do the same thing. And I know that we work very closely with municipalities. And so this has been a really important thing for me to do. In terms of myself, so we're coming here at LGL, I was at Toronto Public Health for about 2 years during the pandemic, working there with a focus on residents in long-term care homes and retirement homes, as well as a focus on workplaces. And before that, I was at the Grey Bruce Health Unit, where the largest urban center there is Owen Sound. And before that, I was actually still in residency at Queen's. And during that time, I was able to do a rotation for a chunk of time here at the health unit in Leeds Granville Lanark, and working with Paula Stewart at the time, and really enjoyed my time here at the health unit. And so when Paula said that she was retiring, I was really quite excited to be able to apply, and so here I am. In terms of updates, I really, my time here today isn't necessarily to bring updates on the health unit work, which I'm sure many of you guys know a number of things about and will be learning about over time. We're happy to bring information to the council, but what I want to talk to today is really more about just introducing myself. A few things that I did want to mention, though. One is that we will be doing monthly municipal calls. I know that previously, when the pandemic was really at its hottest, there was even up to weekly municipal calls. And so those will be restarting with a refocus away from COVID-19 and respiratory transmission, and more to a lot of the day-to-day work that we work very closely with municipalities on. And so that will be monthly. And the first call is planned. The council's Peter McKenna will be is the chair of our board, actually, and so he will be chairing those meetings. And as well, the other thing that I want to mention is that as a Health Unit, we will be undergoing a strategic planning process over the course of this 2023 year, and we'll be soliciting feedback from municipalities and from the public during that time. So please keep an eye out for those communications from the Health Unit. I'll close with just two things. One is, again, acknowledging that the work that we do at the Health Unit is really hand in hand with a lot of the work that municipalities do. I think we have a lot of common cause in the way that we work together on improving health and well-being for people in our communities. And I know that that has been borne out a lot during the pandemic and as well beforehand in the collaborations that we had with municipalities. And so that continues to be a really important element for the work that the Health Unit will be doing down the road. And then the last is, again, an acknowledgement of the membership of our boards of health being primarily from municipal councils. So I mentioned Peter is Smith Falls and is also the chair of the board, and we have many other municipal members on the Board of Health, which also helps with our close collaboration with municipalities. So I'll leave it at that. It's nice to meet everyone. And yeah, if there's questions, comments, happy to.
Thank you so much, Dr. Lee, and we're really looking forward to working with you. I'll turn it over to my colleagues to see if anyone has any questions at this time. Councillor Brennan.
Hi, Dr. Lee, and very nice to meet you. And I feel like I've already met you because you've been on a local radio station every week, and I always enjoy listening to you. And not to bring up something that we're trying to forget, but maybe since people are watching this, how are we doing with our COVID situation? I know pretty good, but I'd like to hear it from you.
Yeah, absolutely. So in terms of our COVID-19, and I'll say maybe I'll break it down into two facets. One is the situation for numbers for COVID-19, which is looking quite stable right now and has been stable since, I'll say, probably the fall and winter of 2022. And so we've had a smaller number of cases among confirmed cases in our region, and with the caveat that, of course, not everyone who gets COVID-19 ends up getting counted as part of our confirmed cases here at the Health Unit, because you need to get that official PCR test in order to get into our numbers here at the Health Unit. And lots of people aren't doing that. But it is a good proxy of the level of transmission in our region, which looks to be quite stable. And I would say, you know, I wouldn't necessarily call it low, because we do continue to have transmission. And for example, in the past week, we have had about 100 cases detected in our region in the official numbers. And we know we've had many more cases in our region undetected. In terms of severity, which is also important for COVID-19 because the cases are not as severe as they once were, we do continue to have severe cases, including, unfortunately, hospitalizations and deaths in our region, though those are relatively low numbers. Among people who do have severe outcomes, we continue to see that age is the most significant risk factor for severe outcomes. And as well, some chronic conditions as well can be a risk factor. Protective factors, the greatest still remains vaccination and being up to date for vaccination, and as well, of course, age, right, being the flip side of age being a risk factor. Younger age is a protective factor. In terms of outbreaks, we've had relatively few outbreaks with COVID-19 identified as the primary pathogen. We have had outbreaks of other respiratory viruses in sort of the same vein as transmission of non-COVID-19 respiratory viruses, which continues to happen in the region as well. We did have a flu outbreak along with the rest of the province for up until probably around Christmas and in very early parts of January. That has abated, but we do continue to have transmission of non-COVID-19, non-flu respiratory viruses. So we're talking about rhino and enterovirus, other cold-causing viruses, which do cause severe outcomes for a small number of our residents. And so, for most people, it's a terrible day for a number of days, but for some people, it can be quite severe as well. So that's the summary there. In terms of the second half, which is our response, so here at the Health Unit, we do continue to have response to COVID-19. We do identify and investigate for provincial reporting any severe cases, and we do also follow high-risk outbreaks, so mostly in congregate settings such as hospitals, long-term care homes. And of course, if there's questions, comments about COVID-19, we're always looking out for that as well. And lastly, of course, COVID-19 related vaccination continues for people who are eligible. So I'll leave it at that.
Thanks, Dr. Lee. And I want to congratulate the Health Unit because I think that our area was a leader in the province, and people have realized how to protect themselves and protect others too. So thank you very, very much for all the work you've done.
Yeah, and thanks to the residents who've really done a lot of that as well.
Thank you. Mayor Panko, you had a question?
Sure. Great to see you here today, Dr. Lee. And thank you for taking on this role and responsibility for the last 6 months, and hopefully it's a forever thing. Understanding that the Health Unit was really focused on the pandemic and keeping us all safe. And as Councillor Brennan said, we got through things reasonably well, not obviously unscathed, but reasonably well. And I think taking a leadership role in the province when it came to uptake for vaccinations, and a lot of that was the work of your predecessor, Dr. Stewart, and the entire team. But understanding a lot of the programs that the Health Unit provides, a lot of, I guess, the programs and actions were somewhat suppressed or almost parked at times, I guess, through the pandemic. I assume a lot of that's up and running full steam again, but I'm also wondering, based on the world today is different than the world was in 2019, and of the sort of 24 different programs that the Health Unit is involved in, are you reallocating resources to areas of higher need today, or able to pivot based on the conditions within our communities, or how do you move forward to maximize the benefit you bring to our citizens?
Yeah, so this is, I think, exactly striking what we've been spending a lot of our time and energy thinking about, especially strategically across the organization. There's a few things that I'll maybe comment on that topic. One is that we are undergoing our strategic planning process in part to help us identify and have that bigger picture look at the long-term way in which the Health Unit responds to health needs in our community. And so that's sort of in the, I would consider maybe medium to long term, we're talking about the next 3 to 5 years. In terms of our response right now, there has been a lot of work at the Health Unit in looking at the programs that we did have to pause during the pandemic, and reviewing what is the state of the work now, what is the state of health needs and health interest among our community now, and then also how do we move forward with community partners. And so there's lots of examples of what we're doing there. So for example, one of the things that we're doing is regarding smoking cessation, and bring back a lot of programming there, and direct care provision and counseling for residents in our region. Another example is where we've done, very specific example is fluoride varnishing for kids in school. So our staff used to do that we've been doing that for a while. And of course, during the pandemic, because schools were closed, because we had difficulty getting into schools, and because we didn't have the staff to be able to do that anymore, is restarting again. There's a lot of these examples of things where we've assessed the situation and have already planned the restarts or are already doing it. There are a number of things as well where we're currently still assessing the information, doing that environmental and situational assessment to understand what program delivery looks like in this new layout of or landscape of our communities. So both in terms of what community partners are still there, what their interests are now, as well as what we're able to provide in terms of support. And then lastly, looking at data about the health needs in our community. And so we've had some data recently and during the pandemic, but some of the data that we would have seen from our communities was suspended during the pandemic. And so there's a little bit of a gap in the health knowledge that we have about our community right now. And so that's a matter of also spending the time to look at new data sources to understand the health needs of our community. So lots of activity going on. It is a process. It will probably take a full year, if not more, to really catch up on a lot of the things that the health unit had previously been doing, and also understand how we'll be doing those things down the road. For example, the childhood vaccinations, so not school-based, which is a whole nother thing, but even before kids' school, access to childhood vaccinations has really changed over the course of the pandemic. And it'll probably take a year or two to get a sense even of the numbers and start being able to catch kids up so that we have the full protection of vaccination among our kids.
Thank you. And I know our next presentation, if you have time to stick around, from Planet Youth, probably ties in very well into your work. So thank you. And also want to thank Councillor McKenna for serving as a representative on the health unit over the previous term, and for stepping up to be chair this term.
Thank you. And I think Councillor McKenna has his hand up for the last word.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And just to add one more comment to Lena's long list is that for those around council and those watching, the majority of the work that the health unit does is actually mandated by the province of Ontario. So we have some leeway and we can set some of the priorities. But a lot of this work is directed from Toronto to all the health units in Ontario. And so we have to meet the mandatory obligations as well as the local. So Dr. Lee and her team have their work cut out for them. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McKenna. And thank you again, Dr. Lee, for being with us tonight and for the update and for your great work. And it was nice to see your team out recently at the wellness fair and back into our community in a way more broader sense than COVID. So thank you so much for all that you've done. Okay. On that, we will thank Dr. Lee and move on to Andrew Lynch, who is here to provide us an update on the Planet Youth Project and the work going on there. Andrew, nice to see you.
Okay, well, it's great to be here. And I am going to attempt to share my screen now. So let's just... Okay. We are almost there. Okay, here we go. So yes, the purpose of this presentation really is to give you a brief overview of Planet Youth for those of you who might not be familiar with it, and a refresher for those of you who are, an update on where we're at and next steps. So the origins of Planet Youth are in Iceland, and it's sometimes referred to as the Icelandic model for substance reduction among youth. And really, what I invite you to do as I'm talking is to just think about this paradigm, if you will. We typically address substance use by the substance. This substance is harmful, don't use it. This is why it's bad for you, don't use it. And there's value in that, of course. It educates us about various substances and the consequence of their use. But we also know that, especially among youth, it has some value, but they found in Iceland it was not sufficient to prevent significant substance abuse, especially significant alcohol use among their youth, the highest in Europe at one point. So based on research that was conducted by the Icelandic Social Research and Analysis Institute, they found that they needed to take more of a social approach to reducing substance use by youth and enhancing well-being. So the Icelandic prevention model that evolved, and it is in essence the Planet Youth model, addresses 4 domains. And around all those 4 domains, you could draw another circle that could represent the community. But these are the factors that have been determined to influence substance use, either act as protective factors or risk factors, depending on their presence. So you've got family factors, and some of the examples of those factors are time spent with parents, support, monitoring, which I'll get into a bit more later. Peer group effect. We've all heard about the benefits of positive peer groups and negative ones. School, both participation in schools, feelings of safety, engagement, and extracurricular and leisure activities. And that includes unorganized, just how people spend their casual time. In the course of the 20 years that Planet Youth framework has been implemented in Iceland, these are some of the rather dramatic changes they've witnessed. So for example, the drunk in the last 30 days has dropped from 42% of 15-year-olds to 5%. Yeah, you can read that and see for yourself. One of the other factors that was significant in Iceland and Reykjavik, and has been the case in some other jurisdictions, is the time spent with parents during the weekends. And you can see that in Iceland, there was a dramatic change in that factor. And once again, the more engagement with parents and families, the less likely youth were to engage in substance use. I can really summarize the 5 guiding principles of the Planet Youth model with one word, and that's community. And it's not about a program that tells communities, this is what you do. It's really a framework for engaging various stakeholders in the communities, stakeholders represented in those domains, and others in learning about what youth are telling us through the surveys about issues, and also exploring what we can do. So what we do through Planet Youth is really present the information that we're getting from students, share some of the strategies that have been used elsewhere, but really engage in dialogue with the community about next steps. So in essence, this is the picture. What do we do now? It's not Planet Youth's role to tell community members what to do. It's to provide opportunities for us to engage and figure out what we need to do. And by the way, engagement also includes engagement with youth. I'm not going to get into the weeds here on the guidance model. COVID certainly put the brakes on our progress. Things were humming along before COVID, and we had planned to do the student survey, for instance, in late winter, early spring of 2020, and needless to say, that didn't happen. And also in the meantime, we have lost some of our school contacts, and we're in the process of re-engaging with them. So right now we're at step 6, which is the dissemination of findings through reports and presentations like this. And we're moving towards step 7, which is goal setting with members of the community based on the information that we present and what they see as important. So I've alluded a bit to surveys and data, and one of the key elements of the Planet Youth Framework is data collection through surveys of youth. And what they found in Iceland, and this model's been adopted elsewhere, is they developed a survey which they have reviewed regularly and has been subject to pretty intense research scrutiny to ensure its rigor. They've developed a survey that's used with 15-year-olds, so roughly grade 10 students age. And they found that seems to be a sweet spot. So the data that you're going to be looking at in a moment was collected in February and March of 2022 from high school students in Lanark County and Smiths Falls, grade 10 high school students. The municipal reports, which you have access to through our website, give a much more breakdown. So the next few slides are going to give you some summaries of the data, and that data is based on what the students reported in the surveys. So this gives you a snapshot. You can see, for instance, the tried alcohol at age 13 or younger number is similar to that for the rest of Lanark County. I think it's the highest is around 33%. But significantly, for instance, the percentage of youth reporting having been drunk in the past 30 days is high, and it's higher not only than the average, but it's high given the fact that the percentage of students reporting consuming alcohol is a bit less. The e-cigarettes and figure is significantly higher than it is for some jurisdictions. So this is, again, this is a snapshot. It gives you an idea of the kinds of information that are available through the survey report regarding substance use. One of the domains that I referred to is family. So these are the domains that capture both the risk and protective factors. And one I want to draw your attention to, is the parental monitoring. And this is one of those ones that can have a significant impact on the degree to which youth use or don't use substances. So I'm just going to jump ahead to this next screen, which gives you a bit of information there. And you can see where youth report a high level of parental monitoring, there's significantly less substance use than there is among youth who report low parental monitoring. And this is also to show you ways in which the data and the findings can be correlated and compared. Back to peer groups, one of the other domains. So that adolescents who agree or strongly agree that they need to do the following in order to belong to a group. And you can all probably think of times in your development where you wanted to belong to a group, and the point of entry may have been any of these, or athletic prowess or musicianship, whatever it is. And the next screen shows slightly different information in that it's about perceptions. So proportion of adolescents who report that almost all of their friends do the following. Keep in mind, there's a lot more detail in the municipal reports. This is just a bit of a snapshot. The school findings information, even in this form, is interesting. As a retired principal who still does some work in schools, the one that really jumped out at me was that only 69% of students reported feeling safe. And that's pretty typical across the county. There are slight differences in percentage, but that was one that definitely, as I guess to state the obvious, feeling safe at school is important for not only a sense of well-being, but for academic progress and success. So that's the kind of thing that schools may want to address. By the way, every high school received copies of their school report. We haven't seen those. They've gone to the high schools, and the data in those reports is specific to the school community. So it is distinct to distinguish it from the municipal findings. Leisure activities, I would certainly draw your attention to the fact that 74% of girls reported spending 3 hours or more on social media a day. And, you know, more boys than girls play video games. So there's some sort of, I guess, a bit of support for some stereotypes, but also it invites questions about students' sense of well-being, which leads me to the next slide. I will say something that is not here, and that is, this doesn't necessarily reflect non-gender conforming students, and I'm not sure how we're going to be able to tease that one out, but I think we will in years to come. Anyway, the big one here is that all youth, or at least the majority of youth, reported getting less, or in some cases significantly less than the recommended amount of sleep. So in terms of health and well-being and cognitive development, sleep is important. And that is something, for instance, the families might be interested in. Part of what we will do in youth engagement is discuss the data too, and areas of significance for them. The other, a couple of the others that jump out are the differences between males and females and their assessment of their own mental health, and even degrees of happiness. So next steps for us, much like I'm doing tonight, we'll continue to reach out to municipalities. We're establishing, reconnecting with school boards. By the end of next week, somebody will have completed a number of youth engagement sections and sessions in different areas of the municipality of Lanark County. And we should have more to report about what she has found and what students or youth have told her. We invite you to go to the Planet Youth Lanark website and look at the survey findings for your municipality. And I mentioned we're at stage 6 and stage 7, the goal setting is coming. And what we are going to do is encourage representatives from all of the municipalities to participate in the goal setting. Could be counselors, could be staff members, but that will be critical, I think, to ensuring that we get broad representation and some really good ideas coming out of this about what people see as important, and recognizing that different groups will feel compelled to address different priorities that are represented in those findings. So that's my 10-minute elevator pitch.
Thank you. I just ask that you stop sharing your screen so that we can see faces here
Absolutely.
too. And thanks so much for your presentation and for that information. I was making a lot of notes to take back to my day job, so I appreciate that.
Yes.
I'll open it up now and just ask, Mayor Panko has a question.
Thanks, Madam Chair, and thank you, Andrew. It was good to see you a few weeks ago at the Connect Well Community Fair. As a parent of a grade 10 student, grade 10 last year when she finished, she did the survey, and as another son who turned 15 today, this is another 13-year-old at home, very relevant. And especially coming out of the pandemic, we recognize, I think, that also kids are maybe not the same as what they were going in, and some of the challenges that they face, and seeing the numbers that you have in front of us here, even vape, I mean, electronic cigarettes, almost 1 in 4 kids in our community who are using e-cigarettes, and everything is really deeply concerning. So obviously very, very interested in being part of the discussion going forward, but I'm wondering what role students and youth will have in the discussions going forward, and when it comes to developing programs and solutions to try and help combat these challenges.
That's a great question, and it's one of the ones that we considered very early on in the development of the Lanark County model, because we wanted youth engagement. So currently, as I mentioned, Rebecca Shams, and I've forgotten her title, has been conducting engagement sessions with youth around the county. And I can't speak to the specifics of what she has done or what she has found, but she's going to be sharing that information in the next couple of weeks. Ideally, we would like to see youth, that similar kind of engagement, whether it's with us as representatives of Planet Youth, or even informed people in the health unit through the youth centers and in the schools. As a semi-retired principal these days, I think it's critical that we engage youth in discussing this sort of thing. And there are opportunities. We've got a captive audience in the school, but also it's a way of enhancing the quality of life in the schools by helping students feel invested in their community. And just as an aside, it's a wonderful way to enhance understanding of what democracy is. But I won't go too far down that road at the moment.
Thank you. If I can have a follow-up question, Madam Chair.
Yes.
So the Icelandic model has been in place now for, I think you said 20 years.
Yes.
So obviously there is a lot of evidence on how these young people emerged into adulthood, and the rates of alcohol consumption and smoking and drug use as adults. Have you had any insight into the ongoing merits and benefits of this program, say 15, 20 years later?
Yeah, so they noticed a dramatic decrease in alcohol use among the target group or the surveyed group, but more broadly a reduction too, because one of the things that changed was there was later onset and a reduced onset of, say, alcohol consumption among older youth and adults. So that is carried over to the adult population as well. Whereas before, it had been quite common for youth to start drinking or to be exposed to consuming alcohol at a pretty young age. So that has greatly diminished, and it's carried over into the adult population. I don't have those specific figures, but I could dig them up if you would like.
Encouraging.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Andrew, is this Mr. Reed as your guest this evening?
Yes.
I think he has his hand up. So Mr. Reed, you're on mute, but if you'd like to make a comment.
Thank you. I wanted to add one additional point to the mayor's question, and that is one of the benefits going through into adulthood is there's a corresponding drop over the 25 years from 1998 until 2022. there was a corresponding drop in the application for and the need for treatment of youth as they were moving through this age group and into adulthood. And that has, I think, some significant impact on our communities and how youth are being better prepared, I guess, to step beyond being students and into being community members, other adult community members.
Thank you for adding that. Any further questions? Councillor McKenna?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you both gentlemen. I do understand I've been following the local Planet Youth Initiative for a number of years, and I know it's driven by and large by volunteers. I also know initiatives of this scale and sophistication require dedicated resources and champions. And it's my hope that perhaps after the workshop or the event that you're talking about in the very near future, that we, if council agrees, that we bring it back as a priority item and we have a more in-depth discussion about how the town of Smiths Falls can contribute either in time, energy, or monetary ways, because this will not happen without significant investment and both in dollars and time. So I do hope that this just wasn't a one-off presentation and that we could bring it back, I think, after that workshop. That's my first comment. And my second, I'm going to say this as kind as I can to you, Andrew, because I know you're all volunteers. If you could, I've gone in and looked at the data in more detail. If you could correct the spelling of our wonderful little town in how you spell our name. I know my friends in Perth and Carleton Place wouldn't appreciate their town's name being misspelled. So you've got it in your slides, but on the data report, I'd just love to see it corrected. So thank you.
And you know, I have to say, I am very cognizant of the spelling of Smiths Falls, so I will be sure. Thank you for bringing that to my attention. No need to be kind about it. It's
All right. Thank you.
inexcusable oversight on our part.
Thank you. I think that's it for our questions, Andrew and John. Thank you so much for coming tonight, for sharing the update. And I echo Councillor McKenna's request that we see you again soon and get an update on a regular basis. So I hope you would consider that.
Sure. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you both. Okay, moving on with our agenda. We have no adoption of minutes. We do have a number of directors' reports, so we'll ask CAO Morris to facilitate that, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So we have a plethora of staff talent with us this evening, and we're going to hear from 4 of them with verbal reports, starting with Director Bauman, our new Director of Corporate Services and Treasurer.
Thank you. So I wanted to give an update on 2022 year end. So the auditors were originally hoping to come in April to start the year end, but just due to staffing issues and just the transition from one treasurer to the other, we aren't going to be ready for that timing. So unfortunately, they start hospital audits about mid-April, and they're busy right up until the end of June. So the next available time for us to be on their schedule is in July. So year end will be delayed until that point in time. So I just wanted to provide an update to what the council know.
Thank you. Any questions? Okay, CAO Morris.
Next up, we have our Senior Planner, Carl Grinking.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This evening, I'm bringing 2 quick updates to committee. Firstly, just a reminder to the committee and anyone watching at home that the deadline for applications for the new community improvement plan is this Friday, March 31st. In January, Council will recall that you decided to activate 11 of the 15 financial incentive programs for 2023, and that includes programs available for accessibility improvements, brownfield redevelopment, additional residential unit or secondary apartment support, and facade improvements and building renovations in the downtown core. We have an application intake, which has the deadline this Friday, and if funds are still available from the budget, there will be a second intake in the fall. Applicants are reminded that pre-consultation with planning staff is mandatory in order to give staff the opportunity to assist with applications. Since the application intake opened when the budget was approved, staff have pre-consulted on 11 potential applications, and most of the interest we've seen this year are in facade and downtown related programs. Within the next couple of weeks, following the closure of the program, the staff evaluation working group will meet to assess the downtown and facade programs, and we're hoping to bring to council a complete recommendation for funding by the end of April or early May. We recognize a relatively short turnaround between the time application intake opens and closes. However, we want to ensure that funding decisions are in place to allow for construction to proceed this year. And I'd like to acknowledge and thank Planning Clerk Mary Remig for her work on this. The second update is on our land needs study, and that's a process we've engaged Dillon Consulting to work with us and forecast population and employment projections over the next 25 years, which will help us determine how much land the town will need to fulfill our residential, commercial, industrial, institutional needs. A draft report was prepared and released for public review earlier this month, and a virtual open house was hosted last week where the consultants presented their findings to stakeholders, which included some members of the development community. Within the next couple of weeks, staff will be bringing forward a report seeking council's direction on some next steps before a final land needs report is brought to council for consideration and potential approval. This will form the basis for some of the long-range planning we will be undertaking as part of an upcoming update to our official plan. That's all for me tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Grenke. Any questions? Okay, CAO Morris, this is easy.
Yes, so our third report comes from Director McMunn, Public Works and Utilities.
Thank you, Matt, Malcolm, and good evening, members of council. So this evening, I just got an update on a number of different contracts, annual contracts that we have approved extensions for. So council may not be aware, but we do write those provisions into a number of our operating different things that we do throughout the year. And the three contracts that we've extended is our pavement marking program to AccuLines and Signs Incorporated for this coming spring and summer for line painting throughout town. The second one that we've extended is sewer cleaning and CCTV inspections, so closed circuit television inspection for our sewers, being our sanitary sewers and our storm sewers. That was extended to AquaDrain Services Incorporated. And lastly, winter sand extended with George Tackerberry and Sons Construction out of Athens. So as I said, these are provisions in the contracts that we are in agreement with. The council has signed contracts with these particular proponents for the respective work, and we're just exercising the extension clause in there. On all three cases, they were all subject to CPI increases, and so it's for the previous year from January 1st through till December 31st, and CPI, as we know, was high over the last calendar year, and it came in at 6.4%. So I'm happy to take any questions through the chair if there's any.
Thank you. No hands are up, so that's three. CAO Morris.
Yeah, I'd just like to augment Mr. McMunn's report that each of those service contracts are within the 2023 approved budgets for each of those areas.
Thank you.
Okay, and the fourth report we have from Julia Crowder, our Manager of Economic Development and Tourism.
Thank you. I just wanted to update council on the success of the job fair that happened last week, March 22nd. We seen over or around 400 participants come through the job fair, which has been our highest yet. We had great feedback from those who participated from the employer perspective. We had about 75 booths. Those booths were occupied by employers locally as well as regionally, and also employment service providers. And again, it was was really well received by the community and those who participated. So I wanted to thank again our partners, On Track, the Chamber, Lanark, the United County of Lanark, Leeds and Grenville, Valley Heartland, as well as Chris Samir, who offered up the Settlers Ridge Mall as a venue and provided to staff to help with the organization and setup of the event. So thank you again.
Thank you. And we have a question for you from Councillor McKenna.
Sorry, Madam Chair, that was just an applause from Councillor McKenna.
Oh, I'm sorry. I just caught it out of the corner of my eye,
No,
but
I'm happy to do it verbally as well.
please, would
Not
you?
only
Yes.
not only was it a great turnout, but the number of employers, it was overwhelming. I don't know how you fit them all in there. It was packed.
Part of that partnership with regional and local employment partners and getting the word out there, marketing for the event. And I think we know that employers are looking for employees. And I think we're seeing, employees looking for jobs locally and regional as well. So it was a great start. We're looking at potentially doing one in the fall because we know there's always ongoing need as people change and when summer students go back, employers are looking for staff in the fall, and we're continuing to work on other initiatives to help with workforce development in the community and the region.
Thank you. These events are really labor intensive, and you pulled it off in a very quick turnaround time. So thanks for your work on that, and to all your partners. I know they were tired the next day, but it was a good service to provide to our community. So I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anything further, CAO Morris?
That's it, Madam Chair. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So we have 3 correspondence items today, and I'm not sure if this is the right way to do this, but I thought I would just open it up and see if anyone wanted anything from these items moved into priority issues for discussion. Councillor McKenna.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't know if we want to have it in a priority discussion, but the resolution from the town of Cobourg regarding homelessness and unsheltered persons, it's a very thoughtful and well-written letter and resolution. What I found it was lacking was that, having just come from Lanark County Social Services and the housing report and saw the millions of dollars invested into the prevention of homelessness and to support affordable housing, I just didn't want, if a person read that resolution, there's another side, just to provide a little balance, because it left the impression that there wasn't a lot going on. And I just didn't want the public to think that there's a tremendous amount of energy. Is it enough? Probably not. But both from the federal, provincial, and county levels, and at the municipal level, there's a lot of work and investments. So I just felt that resolution was, I understand the sentiment, but there's much more to that story. And if council wishes, we could have a discussion on that, but I just wanted to flag it. Thank you.
Well said. Thanks, Councillor McKenna. I was looking over to you, Councillor Brennan. I see your hand up.
Yeah, I wanted to flag the other correspondence we had from Chatham-Kent, because I think that that is something that it should be on our radar, and I think our treasurer could confirm that municipal insurance costs are through the roof, and this is not new. And I want to congratulate Chatham-Kent for taking the initiative, and I think that this is something we should be talking about in a future COW meeting. I'd be interested to see they talk about a recommended resolution, but this is province wide, and I think we should talk about it in the future and ask for what they're thinking for a resolution, or what kind of resolution we could put together. And actually, I'll look at the mayor, because Eastern Ontario mayors can talk about it as well and have a united voice on it. But I think that's a great letter to bring forward at this time.
Yeah. Mayor Panko, anything to add there?
Yeah, the EOMC will be meeting sometime later this spring to determine our priorities for this term, especially going forward the next year, and primarily focused on potential delegations at AMO. So yeah, we can certainly bring this up and have it as part of our discussions.
Okay, so if our colleagues agree, do we want to wait until after that opportunity before bringing this back to have more information from staff here? Mayor Panko?
No, I don't think there's any harm in following along with it at this stage, but because I think any initiative by the UNC would not have any immediate solutions anyway. I think collectively across the province, maybe a stronger voice could do something. I don't know if it can make a difference or not, but we know what the costs are rising significantly every year. I don't know what our total insurance bill is now, but I think it's north of $500,000, if I'm not mistaken. So it is something that's very sizable. So anything we can do to help, that's worth the effort.
CEO Morris, I think you were next.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would certainly encourage council to support this resolution by passing one of our own. This is the trajectory of insurance costs is not sustainable. You hear me say that at budget time every year. We get 20% increases year over year. That's just not, that's problematic. And I would point out at the Roma conference earlier this year, I did sit in on a session about insurance, and there was a discussion about what's called reciprocal insurance, which is caught on in the US, not so much in Canada yet, but I think it's something we need as a sector to look at as a way to mitigate some of the unsustainable costs we're incurring. So at the very least, I would encourage council to support this through resolution as a starting point.
Okay, I see nodding heads and thumbs up. Councillor Quinn?
Just briefly, I certainly do agree that we need to be looking at this. And if we sit by quietly and never express opinions, insurance companies will think we're all happy and they can continue to charge us these crazy prices. And Councillor Robinson and I were at a meeting at the Railway Museum this morning, and that's exactly what was said there about the rising costs of insurance. So I do agree that we need to get working on this and yes, come up with our own resolution. And just one other comment, and this goes to Councillor McKenna. Thank you very much, because there is a lot happening with housing and homelessness right here in our area. So thank you for bringing that up and making people aware that there is a lot going on in this municipality of ours. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, CAO Morris, I think you have the thumbs up on a resolution. So we'll leave that with you, I assume.
Yeah, so Clerk Costello will add that to a future council agenda.
Thank you. Okay, anything further on correspondence tonight? Thank you. Okay, no in-camera meeting this evening, so we're moving into our priority issues. The first one is an update on the former water treatment plant redevelopment, and that is with Manager Crowder.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. The report before committee is related to the redevelopment of the former water treatment plant. The proponent has requested an extension to the current exclusivity agreement to allow additional time to complete due diligence, including cost estimations for site remediation and redevelopment, which are necessary for creating and submitting a fulsome draft development proposal for council's consideration. Staff is seeking direction from council tonight with regards to this request. The report outlines background and previous efforts of the town to find a development investor who has the experience and means required to complete a project that provides the best use for the community and in a reasonable time frame. The town entered into an exclusivity agreement with Guy Samir and Sons Construction Limited with the confidence they could achieve this endeavor. The agreement provided 180 days of exclusive due diligence period, which expired last week. Prior to the expiration of the agreement, we received written requests for an extension of 12 months. In subsequent conversations with Mr. Samir, he noted a 9-month extension may provide enough time to complete needed assessments and to submit a fulsome draft proposal. It has been acknowledged that the redevelopment of the former water treatment plant is a large endeavor and poses challenges and costs related to environmental site remediation, and time is required to undertake these analysis. However, the building has continued to deteriorate over the last decade and has fallen victim to vandalism. Both continue to pose liabilities and potential financial impacts for the town while the building remains vacant and undeveloped. Staff have offered 4 options for council's consideration. However, council may wish to provide alternative direction related to the extension of timelines and exclusivity conditions, among other direction. Option 1, council directs staff to extend the current agreement as written for an initial 12 months as requested by the proponent. Option 2, council directs staff to extend the agreement as written for an alternative period of time. Option 3, do not grant the extension and direct staff to investigate remediation and or demolition options of all or portion of the former water treatment plant. Option 4, do not grant an extension and direct staff to seek new investment opportunities, which could include reissuing a future RFP with no additional investment into the property.
Thank you so much. Councillor Robinson.
Thank you. I'm kind of torn on this because, as we all know, the longer it sits, the greater the liability it becomes, and it becomes more of a liability than an asset, in my opinion. And you know, it kind of begs the question to me: is this going to be financially viable for a developer to redevelop and be able to see a return on investment? Like, I don't know. I'm kind of stuck here. I don't know what to think about, you know, 4 options.
Thank you. Other comments or questions, Mayor Panko?
Yeah, I mean, those of us been around for a long period of time, Councillor Brennan and I guess primarily, this has been an ongoing story for many, many years. And we recognize this is a challenging site. I think a site of incredible opportunity, but the factors that need to be looked after for this to result in something are considerable. And we know that if there's any residential development to happen there, which we expect it would be, well, there's a certain amount of remediation required to make sure that it is a suitable building site. So understanding the challenges we've had in the past and trying to find a potential partner here, and recognizing that the housing situation today is much different than even it was a couple of years ago. We know we had close to 400 new residential units approved last year. We know that we're in the middle of a pretty significant building boom. I think we also recognize that the demand has changed, and it may take a while for all the units that are being built right now to be filled and occupied by people. So in the interest rate environment we're in today, it's obviously much more expensive and more costly to borrow to do projects. I think the developers are having to keep a more of a, I guess, a close eye on the cost of construction, and then obviously factoring in the unknowns of a brownfield. So I'm fine with provide a 1-year extension, but I would like to see some evidence of progress through the year, and perhaps that is simply some insight into the brownfield investigations that would be required to get this to the next step. So I'd like to see some degree of progress throughout this year. Maybe that's 6 months from now. We understand that there is some work advancing, but I can appreciate the challenge in bringing this site to development and recognize the merit in providing an extension.
Thank you. I have Councillor McGuire next, and then Councillor Brennan.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Yeah, my head's at the same place as the mayor. I think as long as it's progressing, I'm happy with the extension.
Thank you. Councillor Brennan?
So not to date myself, but the mayor and I were sitting around the table in 2013, and this came up the same proponent had a proposal. And my memory is not the best, but I think he asked for 30 days or maybe 60 days more, and the council that day said no. So I was disappointed with that. I guess first of all, my question is, with the agreement that we have with Semirs, at the end of that, would that mean, and I probably should know this, would that mean there's a purchase price involved from the proponent? So they would have to buy the property first?
Thank you. Manager Crowder, can you speak to that?
Through you, Madam Chair, to Councillor Brennan, that was part of the submission. It would be a proposal, a draft proposal to identify what the development would consist of, as well as an offer to purchase.
A purchase price. Okay, so I don't think it's worth a lot. It is potentially, and the costs are there. We know that, and we made an agreement, a little over 180 days ago for exclusivity, and I'm not sure if there's been any groundwork done in those 180 days. Do we know of that?
Manager Crowder?
You, Madam Chair. Our understanding from the proponent is that he hasn't had the opportunity yet to do fulsome due diligence, and that's why he's asking for the extension.
Okay, well, I know the challenges of the project, obviously. And I think a year is, and I like what the mayor said in terms of, we got to see some sort of progress, because obviously there's been no progress in 6 months. And so I'd be happy to do either 9 months or 6 months. And I'll just throw this out there with no exclusivity. And that means that if someone came along and said, we're going to do this, and then give the proponent first right of refusal. And I think that might spur things along.
Okay.
I don't think the property is worth a lot.
Okay, so we have two suggestions here. Councillor Quinn, did you have questions or?
I'm on that page that I can't really get my head around this, but to think about giving them another year and we don't know what's going to happen, and that year could go by and nothing happened, and we're still in the same boat as we are now. I like Councillor Brennan's suggestion that we say, maybe 6 months or 9 months, but we need to, and the mayor said this also, that we need to have regular reports. What are you doing? What have you been looking at? How are you moving forward? And I totally agree. There isn't much value in that property because it has deteriorated so much. But we need to know that it's moving forward. We don't need to sit here for another year just to be told, no, we've changed our mind and we don't want anything to do with it. Because if that's the way it's going to go, then we should be looking at doing something sooner rather than later. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor McKenna?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I would support a 9-month extension as well, with the kind of progress reports that my colleagues have mentioned. I also want to pick up on Councillor Robinson's concern around the risks. I think there's two things. So that would be, the first part is a response to our friends at Semir Group. That's what I would support. Secondly, if it doesn't already exist, some sort of a risk assessment from the municipality as we sit on this property. If it doesn't already exist, what are our risks over the next 9 months in the event someone gets hurt, the place, something happens? I don't know what those risks are, and then how would we mitigate those risks? The longer it goes on, as Councillor Robinson pointed out, I think our risks go up and thus perhaps our insurance costs would go up as well. I don't know that, but I would wonder if council would ask staff to do a risk assessment while we're waiting for the smear group to make a decision over 9 months or whatever council decides on. Thank you.
Thank you. So, so I think everyone's had a chance to speak, and I too support a 9-month extension. I really appreciate the idea that we have regular updates, and I'd like to suggest those are quarterly, so every 3 months, over 9 months. And I also support Councillor McKenna's suggestion that that we do a risk assessment for the municipality, and I think CAO Morris would have to get his head around what that looks like for us, but that's wise. So I'm hearing most of us are in agreement on the 9-month extension. Councillor Brennan also suggested removing exclusivity. So does anyone have any? I'm not in favor of removing the exclusivity. Does anyone have? So I'll just put it out there. Mayor Panko, yeah.
No, I'm fine with retaining an exclusive agreement with Smear Group right now.
Okay. And Councillor McGuire, and sorry, Mayor Panko, are you okay with the 9 months versus the year? Yes. Councillor McGuire?
I mean, time's going by so quick. I don't know that a year would be okay with me, but I'm good with the consensus here.
Okay, Councillor Brennan, did you want to add something?
Yeah, just with the exclusivity, that's with first right of refusal for the proponent.
Yes.
So that it's not just if someone comes along, then the proponent has the opportunity, of course.
Okay. So right now on the table, we have got 9 months extension, a risk assessment done by us, first right of refusal added to the new agreement. How does council feel about what's on the table now? Councillor McKenna?
I'm fine with the first two. I don't like this. That would be a key change to the agreement, and I wouldn't be in favor of first right of refusal being added at this stage.
Okay. Anyone else on the first right of refusal? Can we see thumbs up if you support it?
Now, just I think that's something to put on the table as negotiating, because it's done all the time in real estate, all the time. So you know what? That might just be what's needed to sort of get this moving along. And you never know who's out there. You never know. There could be that person, that company that says, hey, we can do something with this and we have the money and we can do it now. Doesn't mean that Smear Group is out. It just means that someone else is interested and now they have the first right of refusal.
Thank you, Councillor Quinn. So I'm not seeing full support on that part. So we're back with 9 months extension, an update every 3 months, and an internal risk assessment. Can I see thumbs up if people agree that we're on the right path there?
Yeah. Let's move forward with it.
Okay. All right. Manager Crowder, do you have your direction?
I do, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Okay. Now we have an update from Director McMunn on our Confederation Bridge.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, so the report I have in front of you this evening is just, if Council recalls, back a number of months ago, back around the mid-January, Council considered a report that was brought in front of Committee of the Whole from my office with respect to, how are we going to proceed with making a decision on the Confederation Bridge. And at that particular meeting, we got approval to publish the notice of study completion for the municipal Class EA. We got endorsement of preferred alternative number 4, which was replacement of the Confederation Bridge crossing with a new vehicular and/or pedestrian bridge under the municipal Class EA study, and endorsement of preferred design option replacing with a pedestrian bridge. So prior to that, you know, there was a couple options on the table: pedestrian bridge, vehicular bridge, and we kind of drilled down to pedestrian bridge. So that was great. That gave staff some direction in terms of how to proceed on this file. And then, you know, there was Councillor McGuire. I think it was a split vote 4-3, and we had the caveat to consult with Parks Canada to see if there was maybe some partnership there, or there was potential to expand on their pedestrian pathway along the river adjacent to the park, and or possibly the use of their dam structure. So we took that back, and myself and CAO Morris did have a meeting subsequent to that committee of the whole meeting with Parks Canada on the 7th of March, so not too long ago, a couple of weeks ago. So we met with 3 representatives from the local office here. Susan Miller, who's a planner with Ontario Waterways, Dean Hamilton, who's asset manager and senior engineer with Parks Canada, and Mark Bruce, who's manager of operations. So 3 relatively higher ups that can, you know, that we could consult with and make some decisions, or at least some recommendations on behalf of Parks Canada as a whole. So we had a good productive meeting. It was very, very cold, windy day when we were out there on site. And hence why I had to go back the next day and take the pictures. It was too cold to be out there any longer than we had to that day. So the first location we did look at, and I presume everybody's had a chance to peruse and read the report. But the one location is the pathway directly adjacent to the river. That's an overnight mooring site for transient boaters. And you know, so we had a kind of a general discussion about that, and after 10 or 15 minutes about talking about it, I believe it was Mark Bruce, I don't know if I'm pronouncing his name, it could be Bruce. He did note from an operations standpoint that the Parks Canada would not be in favor of an extension on that part of the walkway for a number of different reasons. Didn't feel that boater you know, people disembarking or getting onto their boats in that general area, that it would be a good mix with pedestrians in that general area. So that was kind of off the table at that particular standpoint. The next option we looked at was the dam structure itself, which we know is a little closer to being adjacent to the Confederation Bridge, and specifically the north side of the dam structure. So I did include a picture. I took a bunch of pictures of that structure that particular day, and the one I showed in the report does kind of represent the piers that would protrude out from the north side of the dam structure towards the Confederation Bridge. So the senior engineer that was with us that day, Dean Hamilton, he did note that, you know, if there was definitely a possibility that there could be something cantilevered off that particular side of the dam structure. You know, it wasn't out of the realm of possibilities. However, that was just a general discussion, and there's a lot of unknowns. Both of the walkway structure and the dam structure are certainly not as old as our Confed Bridge. I believe they were constructed in the 60s or early 70s. But that all said, you know, the concrete is nearing 50 to 60 years old, and there's some uncertainty in terms of, like, from an asset management perspective, how Parks Canada has managed those 2 structures from an integrity standpoint over the years. Not to say they were doing anything wrong, but we're not quite sure where they're at with all of that. And so anyways, we didn't have Macintosh Perry at that particular meeting that day. We just felt it prudent that it be at the staff level. But following the meeting, I did send some correspondence off to Lisa Marshall, who everybody's aware of here. She's sat in on a couple of these Confederation Bridge discussions, and they are the ones that have completed the municipal Class EA on behalf of the town. And so I did brief her on those particular discussions that we had on the 7th of March, and I sent her a ton of pictures and kind of summarized the discussion that we had, and basically was asking, you know, in her experience and in Ghassan Zanzul, who is their senior engineer with Macintosh Perry, what they thought in terms of, you know, the thought or the idea of utilizing that dam structure. So they did come back with a memorandum, and I did attach that as attachment number 3 to the report. So there was a whole bunch of I guess not conditions, but some sensitivities around that particular structure that were noted by Zanzul. And again, a lot of it's the uncertainty is in terms of what we would be getting into. Oddly enough, when that was forwarded from Lisa Marshall's office, I quickly followed up to ask her, well, this is all great, but what would all that cost to get into doing all these different assessments and whatnot? And over and above our commitment to the municipal class EA, which we know was in and around $85,000 roughly to go through that whole process. And again, very high level, she came back, she took some time that day and talked to Zanzul, and they came back with a rough ballpark estimate of $114,500 to complete additional studies. Basically, in a nutshell, we'd be going back, we'd be reopening up the municipal class EA, we'd be doing a fairly significant amendment. There'd be archaeological assessment, cultural heritage impact assessment that would have to be conducted on the structure, geotechnical, I mentioned archaeological already, hydraulic analysis for that being a proposed alternative. To the tune of $114,500. It may not cost exactly that. It could be less, could be over. Again, there's a tremendous amount of uncertainty in terms of, it's like opening up an old house. It's like if we were to renovate the old former water treatment plant, you never quite know what you're getting into till you get into it. Similar could be said for the dam structure. One of the other main concerns that I have, and I believe Malcolm would be in agreement as well, is that, because it would be a shared use of Parks Canada's dam crossing, there'd be, if we were to get into an agreement for use, there would be have to be indemnification. There'd be a sharing of, well, not liability would probably fall on the back of the town in that particular case, if anything were to happen from a liability standpoint. So with that said, certainly council's direction, but the one thing I'm concerned with right now is the fact that we're rolling into springtime here, and we're in a good position right now to finish up on some of the site investigative works that need to be done if we were to utilize the existing crossing. Some geotech work to get it rolling on the detailed design for a new pedestrian crossing at the existing location. So all I like to say, time's ticking, and not to put any pressure on council, but I believe this report does suggest the feeling of at least the Public Works Department on how to proceed. And I would like to proceed based on the recommendation that we approve the location of the new pedestrian bridge in the current location as it sits today, and that further council directs staff to advance the Confederation Bridge Drive project to the detailed design phase for a pedestrian application. So if council was in favor of that, I would go back to Lisa Marshall at McIntosh Perry and engage them to give us a costing proposal for a detailed design, because right now we're under contract with them to complete the municipal class EA absent of a detailed design. So I would come back to council and try to gauge the appetite in terms of, do we go back out for an RFP for detailed design, or do we continue with Mac Perry and do this through a change order? So with that, I'll stop talking and turn it back over to yourself, Madam Chair, and happy to take any questions.
Thank you. And thanks for all the legwork on this. That's very helpful. Councillor McGuire, you have a question?
Thanks, Madam Chair, and thanks, Director McMunn. I appreciated reading your report. I'd be more comfortable going out with an RFP for the detailed design. My experience, as this has come to council multiple times, the Class EA process wasn't smooth. And I see not looking at the bigger picture going through it was an oversight. So I'd like to see us put an RFP out there for the detailed design, see what options are there. I've got two questions. The first is, I'm wondering, is there any design constraints that we're limited to through the Class EA process on how many spans the bridge has, the design of the bridge, or anything like that at this point?
Through the chair. So Councillor McGuire, I presume you're talking about the existing location?
Yeah, it sounds like that's a done deal. We're not I don't think there's any appetite to spend another 100 grand on another EA.
Yeah. So through the chair, the if council recalls, originally we were looking at a clone version of the existing structure. So a clone version would necessitate the use of the center pier. So in order to use the center pier, there would be some additional investigative assessment work, I guess you could say, that would have to be conducted on the center pier, basically to gauge its integrity, some underwater investigation, that type of thing. It's concrete. We want to make sure that the integrity is there to support the structure. So there's that hasn't been completed yet. But that is all kind of hinged on the quote unquote cloning of the existing structure. We know that there's going to have to be work on the existing abutments, but the center pier is in question. I would suggest that it could be a little bit difficult when we go out to RFP for proponents to bid this work, unless we're very descriptive in terms of what we want out of the structure. Do we want to stick with the clone version where we're going to be utilizing the center pier, or do we want to look to perhaps more of a cambered bridge, that's arced vertically to span the distance across the river from abutment to abutment? And there's all kinds of examples out there. If council just wanted to make note, if you looked up Algonquin Bridge or Eagle Bridge, there's a number of different options out there for different crossings that are more of a cambered structure. So why I say that would kind of negate the requirement to use that center pier for load bearing. Not to say we have to remove it. It could sit there and just be superficial and not carry any load of the new structure, and it would still give the appearance that it's there for a purpose. It certainly does have some heritage attributes for sure that we may want to maintain and leave, albeit not do a rehabilitation on it. Just leave it there, and it'll last as long as it lasts. But yeah, those would be, that is what I would see as being kind of the limiting design factors right now, is if we're going to dig our heels in on this clone version and try to make it look like the old structure, then we would have to utilize the center pier just as the old vehicular crossing did.
Councillor McGuire, you had a second question?
Actually, that more or less answers it for me, but I've got a comment on what Director McMunn said, and that's, I think the cloned option is really putting us in too narrow of a place right now. I think it's inflating the cost. And when we take a look at the preliminary designs of the cloned option, it's really not going to give us the same look and feel that we have right now. So I think we should open that up. I'd really like to see the RFP, or I don't know what the right term would be, but the kind of design process where the bidders would submit a concept design, and then we can pick who's doing the detailed design based on the most appealing proposal, because I think this is a centerpiece of the town. I think the design of the structure is going to be as important as the function of it. And I think that would give us the flexibility to really let the bidders get creative of what could fill that space.
Okay, thank you. I have Councillor Robinson and then Mayor Panko.
I just have a few, thank you. I just have a few comments. My thoughts on this subject probably aren't going to be very well received. I'm not going to be able to support this. And I'll tell you why. In good conscience, it would be extremely hypocritical of me to approve to help advance something that I was not in favor of in the first place. So I'm not going to be supporting this.
Mayor Panko?
Thank you. Council's decision was to move forward with a active transportation crossing. And so in the situation, I think we have a unique opportunity to, in my mind, do more than simply a river crossing, more than something that's going to allow people to get from one side to the other, whether they're walking and cycling or motor scooters or whatever. So I like the concept or the thought that Councillor McGuire had with regards to maybe coming up with some concepts, some thoughts about what we would like to see there, and then going out for RFP for potential solutions. And I look at the center pier as being potentially an opportunity to create a destination, an environment, an experience. In other words, people always come to Smith Falls and say, well, where's the falls? And well, if you're standing in the middle of that bridge, the falls are right there. And we know that many municipalities have sites for photo ops where they might have the town logo or the city name that people would come and get their picture taken at. And I would see this as an opportunity to put some, potentially a place of gathering right in the middle of that bridge where you can widen it, the centerpiece, have a place to some benches and tables and maybe a spot for photos and enjoy the experience more than simply structuring it from one side to the other. So I support the suggestion that we council agree on what we want to see there as a crossing, what type of features we want to potentially add to it, and then go out for potential designs that would support that vision.
Thank you. Other questions or comments? Councillor McKenna?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And just want to confirm Councillor McGuire's assumption that we've all agreed that this is the location, what the staff are recommending. I just want to confirm that. And I believe I agree with it, that we did take a little sidestep, took a look at it, at other options. We've come back to that, and that's fine. And I just remind our group that council made the decision, as the mayor pointed out, that this is the direction we're going in, and it's incumbent on all of us now to put our shoulder to the wheel and to get behind this and to do our jobs individually and collectively to advance what's in the best interest of the town. So I just, it's not like we can duck out and say, I don't like it, so I don't want to play this. This is our job. And so I'm ready to roll my sleeves up and get behind this. And hopefully, and I know, I'm confident we'll have a good outcome. So I'm interested in, I support the location. If Director McMahon could just tell us, going out to tender on the design concept and maybe some of how different that is than the detailed design of the final product. So I guess we're looking for requests for inviting concepts to be put forward. Is that how that would work? And how much would that, I guess it adds time. I'm assuming that the design people would also be, or sorry, the concept people, if we selected their concept, they're also the kind of people that can do the detailed design. So that would accelerate the advancement. I'm just wondering how much will this slow us down? Because I like the idea. I just want to know, if you could just explain that process.
Yeah, through the chair. A great question. I think the best way to proceed would be for myself to come back to committee, perhaps at the next cycle, with a couple of different options for look and feel. Just generally speaking, I'm not talking about color and what the finish is going to be, but just a couple of different options in terms of, is it a cantilevered structure that spans from abutment to abutment, and what it could look like? Are we going to integrate some lighting into it, or what have you? I believe any of the proponents that would be bidding what the structure could look like, i.e. the manufacturers out there, they all have engineers on staff that can do the design. They would just need the information. They'd come out, they'd take the municipal class EA, they'd have to take the measurements of the span of the abutments and the condition assessment that's in the municipal class EA for the abutments, or the work that's been done with the abutments. We haven't done a full-on assessment of those abutments yet. That still has to be completed through the municipal class EA process. Yeah, so those same folks that would come back with a look and feel of what the structure could look like would still be the ones that would provide a proposal through that RFP for detailed design. So we would have a price, and then council would take that under consideration and hopefully get an award, and they get rolling on that detailed design, get the tender package prepared, and get it out to tender.
If I may, Madam Chair.
Please.
So does that mean that would you or we be constraining the design if you came back with, I understand we have to put some parameters around it. We're not, here's a blank slate. We want it in this location. We have a cost ceiling. I don't know if we say that, but so what does how do you put parameters around it without limiting the kind of creative ideas that the mayor was speaking about?
Yeah, through the chair, we are going to be, there are going to be some limitations with the structure in terms of the National Structure Building Code. So the span is the big driver behind that. It is quite a span from abutment to abutment, so they'll have to take that into consideration. So the actual engineering design of the structure to be able to carry the load from one side to the other. We know it's not vehicular, it's going to be pedestrian, active transportation, but you got snow load, you got wind load, all of those different factors which are going to influence what the design actually looks like from an engineering standpoint. So there could quite frankly be some things that we couldn't do to the structure just based on those different elements. But I think it would still give some luxury to the proponents that are bidding it to get a little bit creative within the scope of what this council is looking for. Right, general look and feel, and then they could get a little bit creative and come back, and then we can simply go, yeah, we want that. No, I don't think we want it. We don't want it to be purple. We want it to be black, or we want it to be weathered steel. Have that nice rusty patina over time, or what have you. So, yeah.
Okay, thank you. I think I saw your hand up, Councillor McGuire.
Yeah, thanks, Madam Chair. My following up on Councillor McKenna's comments, my preference would definitely be to focus, as Mayor Panko is saying, what's the functionality we want out of it? What are the features we want to see in it? And leave that design as open-ended as possible for the different concepts to come. And then treat it as much like a piece of public art as it is a piece of public infrastructure.
Thank you. So if I'm hearing correctly, what I'm gathering is that we have enough support here, Director McMunn, to support your recommendation. We would like to hear from you about those required design elements. Thanks, Councillor Brennan. I'll come right to you. And then go out to RFP. So that's kind of the summary of what I'm hearing from Council. Councillor Brennan, can you weigh in?
Yeah, I'll just say this, and it's like one of my heroes, Yogi Berra, used to say, it's like deja vu all over again for me, because it was a contentious issue and I was not in support of it, and that's happened before. And so, the fact is, I thought that we needed vehicles to go across the bridge, and I wasn't supported. It was close, but in this case, as long at the minimum, there's got to be some way for people to walk across that area. So, what I'm hearing tonight is about what it's going to look like and where it's going to be, which is fine. But at the end of the day, it's not what I was hoping for. So,
thank you, Councillor Brennan. Councillor Quinn, we haven't heard from you. Did you want to weigh in at all before we moved on?
I hear Councillor Robinson and what he's saying, and Councillor Brennan, and we were the three that really wanted a vehicle bridge there, and that's not happening. So I do have concerns, and I guess let's go out and see what could the designs could be. But I think there's a whole bigger picture here. You can build this bridge, but there's a whole area down in there that needs to be redeveloped as well. Having a bridge where you can sit on it and you can have tables and pictures taken or whatever, great idea, but it comes at a cost. When there's already beautiful areas there that need to be cleaned up and people come and sit and park there, that needs to be taken into consideration also. So if we're going to build a bridge, a walking bridge, which is not what I wanted, But if we're going to build that, build the bridge, but think about the areas around there that need to be beautified, need to be part of making everything look good and drawing people to that particular area. And it could become a photo op for sure. Not sure that the bridge itself is going to be an area where people would sit, but the option is, it's an idea. It's an idea. So I think, Director McMahon, I think you have a lot of work in front of you here to come up with a design that could fit in there nicely. And I would be in favor of one that does not utilize the center support system, lack of a better word, because I think that could be a problem. I think it could become a major problem. So let's go out and see what people have to say. Let's look for the designs that could be out there, and then we'll take it from that. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Quinn. And I think it's very timely that this conversation happened at the same time as the old water treatment plant conversation. So good to see us moving forward in this neighborhood. So I hear from everyone then that we are, or pretty much everyone, that we are good with the staff recommendation. We would like to hear from you, Director McMahon, on design requirements, and then we'd like to go out and hear what our creative partners at the engineering firms can come up with. So if that summarizes it properly, my colleagues, if you could give me a thumbs up, and thank you. And we've given direction to Director McMahon then.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Updates to the Code of Conduct, Director Costello.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I bring before you this evening a report on some refreshments we've made to the Code of Conduct for members of council and local boards. As all of you know, we've had a Code of Conduct in place for many years within the town. In 2018, it became mandated. The town has had one in place since 2004. In 2018, it was legislated that we have one, and we've had one in place since that time. So we have lived with and worked with the Code of Conduct now for over 4 years. And from that, my fellow clerks and I, as well as our Integrity Commissioner, had a meeting and reviewed our Code of Conducts, as well as went over some current case law and best practices to update the Code of Conduct that you have before you this evening. Looking for some minor amendments. There is no change to the fee. It still stays at $150 for a formal request to the Integrity Commissioner. As you all know, we want to keep that low so that it is a process that anyone can go through without feeling that the price tag would hinder them. There is a minor amendment under communications and media relations. It's just to bring clarity to the issue in case something is being discussed at the local plannings tribunal that affects your property, that you would be able to speak to it at that time. Also looking to update 2 of the appendices. One to give more latitude to both Mayor Panko and you as members of council for trying to deal with an informal complaint as you see fit before it turns into a formal complaint, and try to rectify a situation that way. As well as appendix, the other appendix regarding the formal complaint process. It's more regarding timelines about when we publish reports and how long we keep reports published on our website. We're looking at posting them within 30 days of submission and looking to keep them on our websites for a minimum of 5 years. That way it would bridge between the terms of council. As well as a note, I just wanted to bring to all of your attention Bill 5, which is the Stopping Harassment and Abuse by Local Leaders Act. We have taken that into consideration when refreshing our current Code of Conduct. At this time, our Code of Conduct does have wording in it that complies with the Ontario Workplace and Safety Commission, as well as our own health and safety procedures and policies. So at this point, we're just keeping an eye on the bill and seeing how it passes through the legislature. And if we have to bring any updates forward to you, we will do so in a timely fashion. So looking for concurrence for our next council meeting to bring forward a bylaw I will note that this is the same code of conduct that is being presented throughout the county, so that we all mimic each other the same as we did in 2018. And as you all know, we all share the same integrity commissioner through Cunningham Swan. So happy to take any questions you may have.
Thanks, Director Costello, and thanks for all your work on this. Just on the, before I open up the floor further to that Bill 5 piece, I did reach out to MPP Stephen Blaise, who's bringing that harassment bill forward, just to find out more about it. And while we can't put it in our code right now, we could endorse his efforts. So if you haven't heard about this, the amendments require that our code of conduct for our councillors and members of our boards, for those participating, to comply with workplace violence and harassment policies. And so it would also permit municipalities and local boards to direct our integrity commissioner to apply to the court to vacate a member's seat if the commissioner's inquiry determines that one of us has contravened the code of conduct by failing to comply with those violence or harassment policies. So far, 30 municipalities in Ontario have endorsed that bill in order to encourage its passing in the legislature, and the second reading is scheduled for the end of May. So I just wanted to provide that before I open the floor, and to say that I support staff recommendation, but I also support endorsing that Bill 5. Councillor Brennan, you had your hand up.
Yeah, and that's a great point, and I followed that as well. And Mr. Blaise is from Ottawa, as we all know, so there's a case there. So I would be interested to receive information about Bill 5, either from his office or, well, from his office, I would think. And even, some correspondence so we could look at that. And I do support staff's recommendations. I think that we have an impeccable integrity commissioner and an impeccable clerk. So I know that, it's nice to know that we're uniform across our county, and these updates are good. So I support them.
Thank you. Mayor Panko?
Yeah, I too support the recommendation and suggest that we add Bill 5 to an upcoming CAL, so we have a broader discussion, as well as a resolution of support, assuming that's the direction the committee wants to go.
Thank you. Any further, Councillor McKenna?
Yeah, I'm supportive of the Mr. Blaise getting more information on that. I did have a question. I am supportive of staff recommendation, and I'm really delighted to see the informal resolution process. I think if it can be sat down with two willing partners and they can sort it out with the mayor's guidance, I think that's always the first step before you ramp it up. So I like that. I did have a question on 10.5, which is communications and media relations. And it's the added line that no member shall participate in a hearing or other proceeding where the subject matter is personal to the member or involves the property of the member. So I understand the property of the member. I guess it's such a vague term, it's personal to the member. What does that mean? Is there a definition? Because I could take lots of things personally, but I guess, is there a definition that goes, I don't understand what that means.
I don't believe there is a definition, Councillor McKenna, but that's a great question. My own personal opinion would be that would be the a property owner or possible tenant. But I can confirm that with our integrity commissioner, maybe firm up that wording a bit better.
But it does say the property of the member. But yeah, I'm ready to support it as is. But if there is some clarification on that, if you come back, I would appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further comments or questions? So we're in support of Clerk Costello's recommendation and asking that staff bring back a report on Bill 5. Does that sound accurate? Some thumbs, many thumbs. Thank you. Thanks, Clerk Costello. Okay. Okay, our last priority item is with Councillor McGuire.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Councillor Robinson, did you?
Sorry about that.
Yeah, thanks. I'm going to err on the side of caution because this came out of the Police Services Board, didn't it, Councillor McGuire? I'll err on the side of caution and declare a conflict because my daughter-in-law is the deputy chief. Okay.
Sun in my eyes, excuse me. Now, thank you, Councillor Robinson. So you can turn off your camera for this portion. Okay, thanks, Councillor McGuire.
All right, thanks, Madam Chair. So the Court Security and Prisoner Transportation Program is a grant that comes to council every year. It's kind of unique because the funds go to the police service, but it's an agreement that's signed with the municipality. So that's why it's here tonight. The amount for 2023 is $1,940.31. It comes in 4 equal installments. We're going to add in the bylaw this time that to give the CAO and the mayor the ability to sign this agreement in the future, so it doesn't have to come back to council. But for tonight, that's if there's any questions on it, I can take them. But that's what this is about.
Thank you. Any questions? Thumbs up, thumbs up. Thank you, Councillor McGuire, for bringing that forward.
Okay, thanks, Madam Chair.
Okay, we have a suggested motion for adjournment, that the committee adjourn its proceedings at 6:50 p.m. and stand so adjourned until the next duly called committee meeting. I have someone to make the motion, please. Councillor Brennan, seconded by Councillor Robinson. All in favor? We are adjourned. Thank you very much.
Good evening.
Good night.